Hey, Central Arkansas, do you like Star Wars? Do you like comic books? Do you like superheroes? Do you like cosplaying? Well, if you do, you should come join me, Caleb, and the rest of my Southern Fried Geekery co-hosts out at Comic-Con-Way, presented by the Faulkner County Library System on November 15th, 16th, and 17th. On Friday, we're all going to be gathering up at the Faulkner County Library at 1900 Tyler Street in Conway to get together and do a meet and greet. And on Saturday and Sunday, the real fun begins at the Conway Expo and Event Center at 2505 East Oak Street. Come meet media guests Kathy Monroe and Bill Hargraves and the rest of the fantastic comics writers and artists that are going to be there. Pick up a few new books, dress up, show out. We'll see you there.
Finding a lot more lately that books that I've been reading that I really liked as I open them up, and this happens more with independent books than with the big two for me. I'll open them up and I'm just like, I just don't care anymore about this book. I don't know what it is, but I've been noticing that more and more lately.
You say more creator-owned or more big two?
More creator-owned stuff. It's like, okay, the first 3 books were good, but now I'm just kind of like,
see, I'm getting the exact opposite here lately. Like, I don't know if it's just I'm reaching like I'm a spot where superhero comics aren't interesting me as much, or I don't know, maybe like I'm just like I need something else in my life right now, so I'm edging away from that style, and I'll just come back to them later. But I'm really like, last week before last, there was like 4 different sets of annuals that came out that I paid money for these books, and I promptly looked at them as they sat in their bags and boards and said, and moved on with my life.
Finally, somebody gets it with annuals.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about every annual ever.
And I'm just getting away. I like the exact opposite. I like creator-owned stuff and stuff that like is not superhero-y.
I guess with me, it's because I read so much creator-owned stuff that if it's not really sticking with me by like the 3rd issue, I'm just like, okay, I don't care. If that makes sense. Like, and I'm finding more and more of that. And I'm not saying that it's getting worse or anything like that, because I do love the creator-owned stuff, but there's been a lot of them lately that it's like,
No, I feel that, especially when you look at the amount of books that I think we all read, and the amount of time that we have in the day. Yeah, you really have to be like, I am not scared to pull something off of my pull list anymore, because there's too much. There's too much stuff that I want to read, and if something is lackluster and it's just not doing it, even if it's a character or a title that I've loved forever, like an Avengers title, which is still on there, but it's coming close to the cutting point for me. If it's something like that, then I'm just like, I got other stuff I can read. Yeah, you know, and I've got 80 years of comics. I've been
finding more and more OGNs have been gathering my attention more so than trades even or whatever. It's just an OGN I can sit down, I can read a completed story in a half hour and move on to something else.
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that. Like, I was talking to our buddy Jason Wood from 11 O'Clock Comics the other day, and he was mentioning that like this particular month of previews catalog is just there's nothing that's exciting. Like it might be his lowest order from previews in years.
I agree. I've got like a half a sheet of ads, which is very low for me.
I've got 2. Yeah. Like for me, I'm cutting more books in the next month just from and it's not. And he mentioned something like this as well. It's not the state of the industry. We're not saying comics are dying. And
for sure.
It's just
this particular,
this particular month. I'm going more towards the back of the previews catalog than I am any of the front matter. Which I'm looking at more stuff that's independently created. That's not your big 2 or Image stuff or even Dark Horse.
Well, so basically, I try any number 1 from the big 2 just to give it a shot. Unless I just know it's going to be something that I don't like. So outside of that, I'm not going to add something that's 50 issues in unless it's got a creative team or something like that that's changing and I like the new team coming on.
Right.
So generally speaking, it's easy because you just pull out the number 1s and go for the big 2.
Yeah.
And Image is the same. I'm not going to jump on. In most cases, I jumped on like Saga late in the game and, because you hear about it afterward or whatever. And so I jumped on some of them late in the game, but you go back and you get the back issues or you get the trades and get caught up, of course.
God bless the trades for that.
Yeah. And Image does a really good job of getting theirs out in a quick
They do, and most of their number ones are cheap as shit. And they're even cheaper if you go on a site like, Discount Trades or Half Off Trades or something like that. It's the sister company to DiscountComicBookService.com, which, by the way, does not sponsor us yet. We just threw that out there for free. But we're hoping. We're throwing that out there. Hey, Merklers, call us. Like, maybe we need to call you. Let's work out a deal. It would be great. Well, speaking of sponsorships for a podcast, we want to go ahead and intro this thing.
Yeah,
go ahead and do it. Well, hey, everybody sitting down there at home in Radioland. We are the Southern Fried Geekery Podcast. We're back again, sitting around the table for another little geek brunch, we're really just drinking coffee and doing adult things. But for those of you who might not know who we are, I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Matt Drogden.
And I'm Craig Lance.
And we're going to be rolling 3 deep for a little bit. We are...
Probably forever.
Yeah, we made jokes about the 3-man podcast this whole time, and here we are. This is where we're at. Jerry, I texted him this morning. They made it to Denver. He and his lady boxed up all of their worldly possessions and into a little shoebox on wheels with a U-Haul sticker on it, and they hightailed it across the country. So they are going on a grand adventure, and we wish them the best of luck. They made it safely to Denver.
Nice. Awesome.
Were I them, I would just stop there. I love Denver.
Oh, I do
Denver is
too,
such a beautiful town. I lived there for a year. I loved it.
They have these stores where you can buy these little gummy bears that will change your life. I love it.
Yes, so. Those things should be legal everywhere.
I enjoy them. They're magic. They're little bitty magic gummy bears. But yeah, so we're going to be rolling 3 deep for a little bit. Hope you guys enjoy that. I think it leaves more time for banter, more time for discussion. I think that I'm looking forward to that.
For sure.
So we are a comic book podcast. We loves the comics. We like talking about the geek culture and all that fun stuff. So if you have not listened to this podcast before, maybe you're new, maybe you just jumped on, you found us, maybe you read a review on iTunes, which, by the way, if you want to leave us a few more of those, we would love it. Or maybe you heard through word of mouth that hey, this cool show that the guys talk about some stuff. Hey, welcome. So we're going to talk about some funny books. Some of them are going to be new, some of them are going to be old. We kind of talk about a little bit of everything. With that being in mind, if we talk about something that you haven't spoken about or you haven't read before, we'll tell you what it is beforehand. We'll give you the title. That way, if you want to read it, you can push the pause button. But we're going to spoil some things because there's really no way to talk about comics, to talk about this stuff without spoiling it. If you, there is, right? But then you don't really get to have a conversation about it. And I don't do this so I can dance around and avoid the conflict.
We tried that where we waited a couple of weeks before talking about stuff.
Yeah.
And it just, we want to talk about the fresh new stuff and share our excitement for what's good. That doesn't mean we won't talk about old stuff, but
I'm kind of where if I want to talk about something that's older, I want to talk about something that's older, not I read this 2 weeks ago. I want to talk about, I want to go revisit something that's been collecting dust on a shelf for 2 years or 20 years or 40 years, or it's, just something that's not still just new. And it seems like we just kind of, this week's wasn't good, so I grabbed these things from the other week that were better.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, happened. And that's okay too. I mean,
it almost happened this week.
At the ebb and flow,
as
Matt said. But one of the cool things about being a comic fan, and one of the best things if you're into this culture in this world, are conventions that you can go to. These, especially, you know the mega conventions, right? Like, what happens in San Diego and New York, and Craig and I have been to C2E2.
Did I tell you I'm probably going to San Diego this year?
Are you? No.
Yeah, my buddy's trying to get me a ticket.
Do it.
Yeah, if he gets it, I'm going. So.
Can we get you a GoPro if you do? Is that legal?
I don't know, but that would be pretty awesome.
I just wanted to live stream your adventures.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome.
It would be excellent.
Yeah, I'll see if I can. First of all, I'll see if I get a ticket. Yeah. Second of all, I'll see if I get a.
Do they do the lottery system? Is that how that works?
They do, but you get priority if you've been attending. So he always gets his tickets. He goes every year. And he thinks he can get a couple of passes this year. So
yeah,
so
I'm excited.
He's trying to hook me up.
I hope so, dude. It's a carnival, man. It's just
I've never been. I lived in San Diego and never went to it. So I'm excited if it happens. So.
Fingers crossed for you, man. Yep. I want that for you. But we are going to be at a little local con coming up later this month. We're less than 2 weeks away.
I feel like it's probably Arkansas's biggest comic convention.
Yeah.
Now, there's probably a couple that are slightly bigger that are more of entertainment conventions, but this one is almost exclusively comics or comic related.
Yep.
And where are those going to be at?
Conway,
the land of the con.
Yeah, ComiCon-Way is coming up.
November 16th, 17th, and 18th, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe
so. Or is
it
17th, 18th, and 19th?
Anyway, it's that weekend. To the 17th, I thought.
It's that weekend.
The weekend of the 16th. I know that.
It begins on the Friday at the local library there because it is sponsored by the Faulkner County Library. And they always have like a little meet and greet, get together, you get to go schmooze, a lot of fun. Hobnob, rub elbows with people who are more important than I am. And that's always fun.
That's one of my favorite nights of the show because because we kind of know the people that put it on, so we can kind of hang out with the people that are there, and
it's fun times.
I always have a good time on Friday.
And like you said, great artists. There's some incredible people who are going to be there, and it just so happens, and we totally didn't plan this, right? Like we don't have this level of foresight. This is some Hickman level foresight that it would require to make this, like, to schedule.
We went back 2 years ago when we started this podcast, and we worked it out. So number 100
is going to happen right after the con, and we're going to record some, like, we did some homework, y'all. Craig did some homework. I do other homework. We've got some really cool stuff lined up for our episode 100. Really excited about this.
We may be talking to someone that's pretty well known in the industry, and hopefully we'll
convince them to sit in the fourth chair forever.
That would be awesome.
Just be like, hey, how about you just stay with us? You live in Craig's pocket, and you will just do this. But no, it's going to be fun. Like I said, it does wrap into our 100th episode, this being our 98th episode today. I know, it's crazy. It's fun stuff. But we're going to be there. You should come out. It's a great con. Love it. It happens to fall like right before my finals kick off, and I have a little bit of a break, so get some breathing room there. So excited about it, to get out and do some comic-y stuff for the weekend and see people who listen to the show.
Yeah, for sure.
Friends and family.
Yeah, we're going to, like you said, we'll have our table. We're going to have a couple of our buddies sitting there with us, selling some comics that they make.
I heard Matt was going to cosplay.
Are you? You gonna cosplay as a comic nerd?
Yeah, that'll work.
Southern Fried Geekery host.
That's what he's going as. Right. Middle-aged white podcaster.
Yeah.
So to get us kind of started in the mood, like I said, we love comics. We all read a shit ton of comics. I'm kind of curious to know what you've been reading this week, Craig. Drop 3 on us as a short stack.
Yeah, I read New Mutants #1. By Jonathan Hickman, Ed Brisson, Rod Reese, I think is how you say his name, VC's Travis Lanham. I really enjoyed the first issue of this book. I mean, not that I'm shocked with the 2 writers in particular that are on it. So I finally got around to reading Second Coming #2, or #4, I mean, Mark Russell, Richard Pace, Leonard Kirk, which is a fantastic name. He is either a Star Trek fan or his parents.
His mom and dad definitely had to be.
Yeah. Andy Troy and Rob Steen. Really, really just enjoy this book. And there's an incredible scene that happens in jail with a spork because Jesus is in jail for his Messiah complex.
That may or may not have made it to our Instagram page.
It's a pretty wonderful scene. And then I read a fun little book that I wasn't expecting it to be fun. I mean, I expected it to be good, but that was Lock and Key Dog Days. It's a one-shot, and it takes place in the Lock and Key mansion.
Yeah.
With some kids. I'm assuming they might be like children of one of the kids from the original story or something of that nature. But one of them just keeps making these crazy comments through the whole thing. Like he wants to sniff their butt and see if it smells like lunch. He wants to, he'll eat puke and it doesn't even have to be his own. I mean, it's just comments like this through the whole thing. We'll come to find out that they used one of the keys and turned their dog into a human.
Oh,
because
big mistake.
Yeah. So it was rather funny because you don't know that the whole time you're reading it and you're just like, what's the matter with this kid? What is going on?
That's an odd thing.
And then he goes through the door and turns back into a dog, and they start playing fetch with him, and they're like, man, he's just weird when he's a boy, so it was kind of funny.
Yeah. Y'all ever talk about, y'all have dogs?
Yeah.
Back when I used to have dogs, my wife and I once, I was like, if these dogs could talk, what do you think the first thing they would say would be? Have you ever done that?
I'm a dog, I'm a dog, I'm a dog, I'm a dog, I'm a dog. Isn't that what happened in Rover, Red Charlie?
Yeah. Well, so I have 3. I've got a little Boston Terrier who's the oldest, and I think she would... I have a theory that she's like an old Jewish grandma, So she would probably just ask for like a pack of Marlboros and just judge me. Banner, who's my biggest dog, who's the newest one, he's a big furry one. I love him, but he's kind of a simple, just sweet dog, and he would probably just be like, how was your day? Like, it's something just, just Annie, I have zero idea. Her personality like ebbs and flows, kind of like comics do. And it would either just be something like just really excited or something along the lines of I'm only here because I'm afraid I'll die if I'm not. So
yeah, but we had two. One of them, I told my wife, I was like, the first thing this one would say is easy. She would just say, "I love you." The other one would look at me immediately and say, "Go fuck yourself." Because we were at a constant battle for dominance in the house.
Yeah.
This 4-pound dog thought it ran the house.
Did you pee on it? You have to establish that dominance with your dog.
Man, it's hilarious. And I'm, I don't yell at dogs, I'm very, but it was just hilarious.
He says that.
No, I don't. I mean, I'm very,
So I'm a little partial. I have the cutest Chihuahua on the planet.
You really do.
And,
he wears little hats.
Yeah, Apollo. We've put a sombrero on him before, and anyways, he doesn't like it when we do these things.
No,
I'm pretty sure what he would say is, "Why are we talking about my potty behavior again?"
Because you won't get it right.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have two confessions on your short stack. The first being I've never read Lock and Key.
Me either.
I need to.
Both of you need to remedy that.
Yep. I wear my shame. I announce my shame. It's mine. I earn it. The second being my favorite thing. No, not my favorite thing. One of my favorite things about Second Coming, is just number one, the genius of it, but also I love Mark Russell.
Yes.
Mark Russell puts little things in his books that just evolve with the book. And he's also writing Red Sonja right now. And I said it was my favorite thing about that, just to tangent into this. So I totally cheated and lied like a cheater and a liar. Okay. Have y'all noticed in Red Sonja how the main bad guy's hat actually it started off just being kind of a one-sided floppy thing. Now it's an actual pepper.
Yes. Yeah, it looks like a chili pepper. I was dying the whole time. I'm like, do they have him wearing a chili for a hat?
So in Mark Russell books, you have death by spork or attempted murder by spork, and chili pepper hats. It's great.
Yeah,
all the commentary about the miracles in that book and how it ruined everything the first time was so fantastic.
It's an incredibly smartly written book. So
by somebody that's studied theology,
absolutely,
so.
Doing some amazing work. Matt, do you want to test the waters and see if we can get through this
without
me fucking it up?
I have faith. I read, as you guys did as well, Marvel Comics Immortal Hulk number 26.
Yeah.
Of course, this is by Al Ewing, Joe Bennett, Roy Rose, Paul Mounts.
Just kidding.
Dirty.
No, I'm joking.
This was a great, this feels like, anyway, I can only assume, this is a great setup issue for what's coming next.
Yeah. I mean, it was a great issue on its own.
Yeah.
But
But man, it really has me anticipating what's going to happen in this next story arc.
Yeah.
I love that they just ignored 25 didn't happen. They were just like, hey, remember that weird shit you had questions about? Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
That was a setup for later.
Yeah. This targeted Hulk attacks. Yeah. I'm like, oh boy, what is this going to look like? I cannot
picture
wait.
Fight Club with the Hulk.
I mean,
being the Project Chaos.
And he makes this announcement that he's going to do so against these companies that he says, are basically creating problems, and how terrifying would it be to be a corporation right now thinking, is he talking about us?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, going back to Fight Club, if you think of Project Mayhem and every member is just the Hulk, that's essentially what it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's at least what it seemed.
It's exciting. I can't wait to see where this is going, man. I really
Bruce Banner's had enough of humanity.
But I love that the book is not so one-sided. Like, Amadeus Cho came in and made some really salient points. And I'm just like, that's the smart guy in the room.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Amadeus Cho always is.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce Banner obviously is not someone to emulate.
No.
And that was a really good way of driving that.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, by the way, this guy's nuts.
Yeah.
Same thing with going back to Fight Club. Yeah. Because one of the things that kills me about Fight Club is people are like, man, I really thought the exploding the credit, buildings is that was kind of went too far. And I was like, oh, really? The crazy guy had a plan that really didn't make sense to you?
That's a good thing.
It's amazing how many people have misunderstood that book
God,
anyways.
So also I read from Apocalypse Limited, Toxic #1. Toxic is an English comic book in magazine format. This was a creator-owned series. Yeah, go ahead. This is a creator-owned series launched by Pat Mills.
Yep.
Okay. So the creative team in this particular one is Pat Mills, Tony Skinner, who was a writing partner of Pat Mills for a while, Kevin O'Neill, Martin Edmond, Mike McMahon, Alan Grant, Simon Bosley. This is an anthology comic book that Pat Mills launched with some of these other guys in the very early 90s, actually, right before Image happened in the States. And it was their answer to the shortcomings of 2000 AD and how they pay their creators. So they decided to do their own thing. It only lasted around 30 issues. It was a weekly book as well. And it's an interesting read just to see what these guys did with the chains off, I guess you would say. Yeah. It's over the top. It's obnoxious on purpose. If you read the editor's notes at the front, it's encouraging you to not recycle, and that this comic book induces vomiting. And I mean, it's totally obnoxious to a point.
I love books like this.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah. Martin Edmond, his art. Now, this guy, are you guys familiar with Martin Edmond?
I'm vaguely not.
His art, I'm
looking at it right now. Yeah.
Now, this is early Martin Edmond, and he evolves way past what's in this issue. His painting art is incredible. He did some covers for Danzig's Verotic line in the 90s that were my favorite. They're amazing. Unfortunately, and he, if you get online, you can see a lot of his art online. Unfortunately, he took his own life, which is horrible for many reasons. But who knows what this guy was capable of?
Yeah.
So a little bit of a Sienkiewicz vibe.
Yeah,
to some of early Sienkiewicz.
Yeah. And this issue does not belay.
He just wanted to prove that you could say Sienkiewicz.
Fair.
Yeah. It's so yeah, this is an interesting read, and I've found, and these are hard to find because they were, this is an English book. If you can find them on eBay, usually people are trying to get $5 or more per issue, and I found almost the entire run for just over about $1 a piece.
Next time I go to Europe, I will definitely be looking for them.
Yeah, so it's they're honestly not as good as the early 2000 AD stuff. It's the same, mostly the same guys doing it. So It's an interesting read. I'm not a fan of this kind of format where you've got like 5 different very short stories that come out on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
It's just not my favorite, but it's definitely interesting to experience it for what it was in history.
Yeah. Now, are the stories continuing from issue to issue? Okay.
For the most part,
it's similar to like
Marvel
Japanese
Comics
or something like that. Where
there's some exceptions to that. There will be just one issue of a 4-page story or whatever. So I'll stop right there. I could just keep going. But anyway, so that's an interesting, I finally found these. I've been looking for them online. I finally found some at a decent price. So I bought the stack of them and just got them this week. I've been buying a lot of stuff off eBay. I'll go into that more next week, actually. Some other stuff. Also, number 3 from Titan Books, I read a prose book, Martial Law Origins. Pat Mills and Kevin O'Neill. This is basically, Pat Mills was wanting to do another martial law book, but at the time Kevin O'Neill was doing, if I'm thinking correctly, he was busy doing the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Okay.
So reading this was an interesting exercise as well, and I bring this one up because this really drives home the enormous difference in this work not having art, just having prose. And I'm reading it thinking, Jesus Christ, I'd really like to see this, illustrated. Yeah. It would be so much more enjoyable if this was illustrated. And by the time I got done with the book, I was really kind of frustrated because I didn't get to see it illustrated. So it was an interesting exercise to read.
It's always, so coming from, having an English degree and coming from like a literary background in a world where I talk to a lot of writers and prose writers and stuff, that's always one thing I hear whenever I talk about being like loving comics and everything. And they're like, well, it's not real writing. And I'm like, please extrapolate that on. Like, tell me what you think that means.
Unpack that.
Yeah. And it inevitably boils down to, these guys couldn't like write the things that like we write in prose. And maybe that's true. That might be true that they couldn't write in that style. Also, these prose writers can't go and write in comic style. They would write really shitty comics. And so that always gets me. It's like, oh no, what you're saying is you think that your area of the craft is more evolved or more advanced
it's
or
better.
It's a type of gatekeeping. Yeah, I'm just like, no, not so much. Like this type of writing is like comics writing is hard. It's difficult. It's valuable. And it's a dual partnership with another creator.
Well, that whole argument's asinine to me because it's two different mediums.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's like somebody criticizing Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather because it's not a book.
Yeah.
I'm just like, go fuck yourself. It's two different mediums. One's got nothing to do with the other.
I mean, technically Godfather is a book.
But I'm talking about the movie.
It would be like, and similarly taking the script and holding it up against, like taking the script for Dracula and holding it up against Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah.
It's two different things. Like, yes, these are both just black words on a white page, but this is two different forms, different formats, two different types of writing. Yeah. And in one, you're writing to a mass audience who's reading this. And another one, you're writing to a creator. A comics writer is not writing to us sitting at home.
Yeah.
He's writing to the artist. He's writing to the artist to let the artist tell the story, in the same way that a script writes to the director and writes to the filmographer and those kind of things.
Yeah, it's two different things into those kind of conversations. I'm just like, just get over yourself.
Your art's not a higher level of art because you do it.
Yeah. I can hand you as many shitty prose books as you would like if you need examples, bro. Sure. I mean, my gosh, there's no barrier to lack of talent to your industry, man.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah. I agree.
Facts. That was your 3. I counted. I used my fingers. I got up to 3, so I know you're done, so you can't punch me. So I had a fun week reading. I'll go from little to big, I guess. I read Green Lantern Black Stars, #1, by Grant Morrison, art by Zermanko, and then Steve Oliff on the colors. I really enjoyed the design of this book. I enjoyed the artistry of it. It's too Morrison-y per se for me, and it also centers around a character that I don't particularly have a lot of baggage with or background or care about. But I do love the designs. The designs are, I mean, they're weird. They're very Morrison-y. Zermanko does a beautiful job of creating these really grotesque creatures. And because of some other books I read, I don't want to spoil the third book I want to talk about, but there's some very historical designs and design elements from some great creators that you can see the evolution in Zermanko. So I liked it. It's only a 3-issue thing before Green Lantern kicks back off again, so it was worth dipping in. I'll probably get the other 2 issues, but it's not my favorite thing. I did read the Magnificent Miss Marvel I think it was number 7 or number 11. I forget which number it's on. It's been amazing. Saladin Ahmed.
It's been magnificent.
It has been. Saladin Ahmed has really made this a really fun book. Really energetic. It is an all ages type of title. This is not meant for me per se. This is not a book that was meant like with the average 32-year-old white dude in mind. But it's still fun. Yeah, it's really fun. It's energetic. It's talking about some really emotive things. And at the end of the day, it doesn't forget that it's a comic book either. It's a superhero book. Lots of, expansive, ridiculous stuff. Minkyu Jung and Juan Velasco are just killing the art, man. For a character that is very literally expansive, is the equivalent of a Stretch Armstrong, but is also a person of color. There's just there's a new design to the costume. The costume is almost sentient in a way. It's just fun. And you can see the way it reads on the paper is it's very emotive. It's very fluid. There's not a single page in this that I saw and I was like, oh, well, it looks stale. There's none of that. It's been just really, really killer. And then last, but certainly not least, I'm going to make Papa Craig proud real quick. I want to see the glow light up in your eyes as I tell you this. I started Sandman.
About fucking time.
I've already read 1 through 6.
Nocturnals.
This book is genius. I don't need to tell anybody that. I've just never read it. Why I've never read it's mainly because it wasn't around. But I did receive as a gift the first omnibus, and I don't know if I just missed it. We're pretty much steeped in comics culture, right? Like, this is what we do. We're around it all the time. There's very little things that surprise me about books that are 20 years old when I find out about them. I never made the connection that Sam Keith did the first couple of issues. I never made that connection. When I think about Sandman, I think about Bill Sienkiewicz covers. I think about J.H. Williams doing a lot of the work on it. I think about all these other artists. I don't think that I ever made the connection that Sam Keith is the one who did that. And when you talk about what Zermenko is doing in Green Lantern Black Stars, there's a lot of character design that pulls hard from what Sam Keith did. Not only in Sandman, but in his other work, in that early 90s stuff that he did at Image. It's just, and I knew of and had respect for Sam Keith, his art style, long before this, right? So seeing this stuff was not, it wasn't like I found a gem that I never knew about. I knew about it. I did not ever understand it until this point. Like reading these first 6 issues has made me understand Sam Keith and the legend that's created around this design.
Well, and the great thing about the Sandman books is they do have a lot of artists on them. I want to say not quite every trade paperback, but every couple they kind of switch up. And that's just my feeling. I don't know that that's exact numbers, but all of it is within the same style, though. So, yes, you can see that it's a different artist, but it looks close enough and it's the same style as what was happening.
It reads well in a collected tome.
For sure.
Man, fucking Karen Berger. God bless her.
If you think that Hickman set stuff up that he comes back to later, Sandman, I promise you there's stuff in that first trade that you're going to be like, oh, that's why that happened. At issue 70. I'm in love. I'm already in love. I had been reading the Lone Wolf and Cub series. I set up on our Facebook group page a poll, and I said, "Hey, friends, I'm at a crossroads, and I need your help. Tell me which direction to travel. Do I read the third omnibus of Lone Wolf and Cub, or do I read Sandman? Because I don't like making decisions. I make enough decisions through my daily life. So I allowed, I believe in democracy, so I lit it up to a vote. The motherfuckers tied." It did. It was real close.
So it failed you.
So I have to read both simultaneously now, one in each hand. But man, seriously, if you've never read Sandman, do it. There is a level of appreciation for the craft that it pulls the mud from your eyes, and you understand craft-wise some things.
So it doesn't matter what fandom you're in, right? Sometimes classics get past you.
Yep.
And you eventually get around to them, or there's a reason why something's a classic, but it doesn't always mean that it holds up to time.
Absolutely.
And Sandman is absolutely one of those. It's a classic because it was brilliant when it was written.
It
still holds up
brilliant today. It is not outdated. It does not feel like a book that was written the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. That being said, I did preemptively make a Sandman reading playlist with lots of things like Duran Duran, lots of goth punk era stuff. There's some cult in there. There's some KMFDM,
all fitting.
Some punk, just good stuff. So my playlist is awesome. So.
Have you read Sandman, Matt?
I read the first 6 and it was great. I loved it. And
the design, the scene in hell. The scene where he goes to hell to get his mask.
It's cool,
and
man.
All of the demons. Oh my God. I was waiting for the Max to show up. It was stunning. So that's my 3.
Good choices all around. We all read some good books.
And I'm supposed to be reading for law school, and that just is not fun. That's less fun. So I've neglected that to my own
detriment,
I'm sure.
You gotta have time for yourself too.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of polls and stuff and things that we throw out there, we have.
We're gonna dance or something?
Well, no, not those polls. That happens later.
Sharp decline in quality.
we have a Facebook group where I put that poll at, which you can find if you go onto your Facebook page and you search in the little bar and you say, hey, find me the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. It'll pop up and you can ask to be a member. If you answer the little questions, we'll add you to the group. And we would love to have you. We would love to see you there. You can also see some panels. I know I mentioned earlier about the panel of the sporkening. We put that on our Instagram page, and we are on Instagram and Twitter at SFG on both of those. And we would love it if you would come over there and hang out with us. And like our stuff, but not only like our stuff, but engage with us. I could give a shit less if we don't get as many likes as much as comments. I love it when people tell us their thoughts, when they want to have a conversation, and get into the meat and potatoes of these things. That's enjoyable to me. The likes I could really live without, because that's not necessarily saying anything, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of apologize because lately I've been really busy, like you two have, but my Facebook interaction's probably been a little bit down lately, but I'll pick back up.
I mean, we've got 200 and something people in that group though. So like that, they are picking up the slack, our slack. And we appreciate that on a level that I can't explain, because it takes a lot of heat off of us, for them to do that.
Well, I love that it's growing into a community,
which is what we wanted, right? Like what we always wanted. We want to connect with people near and far.
Positive community for comic books and geekdom in general. So,
which is not to say if you don't like something, you can say, hey, I dislike this thing. It's just you don't get to drop the hate on
Batman 82.
Fake news. Fake news. Falsities. Well, speaking of comics, and we are a comics podcast, and we have all three, the thrice of us, we got together this week and we said, hey, Matt, why don't you pick us out a gem? Why don't you decide what book we're going to serve up as our family meal, the main course of the podcast, and we'll all read it, and then we'll gather around the table on Sunday with our coffee and our Diet Mountain Dews and our water, and we'll discuss this thing. And
somebody never warned Matt that when you're asked to do something, if you do it well, you have to keep doing it.
And he did it really well.
He did it really well.
And so Matt used his powers of persuasion to place in our hands a really, really exciting book. It's called Crone from Dark Horse Comics. I don't know. It's been a while since we talked about a Dark Horse book.
Yeah.
It really has. And this book is written, by the way, spoilers. We are going to, like I said it before, but I'm going to say it again. We are going to get into this book. So if you haven't read Crone, maybe it's on your reading pile. Maybe you just haven't got to it, which is respectable. I mean, it's hard to get to these books so fast. Just push the pause button. Or don't. Maybe you don't know if you want to read it. Then you can listen. As Craig always likes to say, it might give you a clue in what you should be reading. But we don't want to spoil anything. We don't want to ruin your experience with this book. So if you haven't read it yet and you're going to, don't listen to our review. Just wait. Come back and read it later or listen to it later. So again, secondary warning. I'm good at that. This book is written by Dennis Culver, and the art is by Justin Greenwood, colors by Brad Simpson, and letters by Pat Brosseau. I was looking at this creative team and I'm like, I know these people. I just don't know where I know them from. Yeah. So I did some internet sleuthing. Dennis Culver has written a little bit, not a lot, but where I know him from is he wrote the Secret Wars E is for Extinction miniseries.
Oh, okay.
And I really enjoyed that, so it makes sense. But Justin Greenwood is the artist on a series that I absolutely loved called Fuse. It's one he wrote with Anthony Johnson, and so that was where I was like, okay, now I've got my bearings. Now I know a little bit about where this comes from and where this is going, and I can kind of lean into this book a little bit, and I did. So we want to talk about it.
Yeah.
All right. So before we get into it, would you want to say thumbs up it, thumbs down it, or do we want to wait till after the?
No, I mean, we usually do it at the beginning. I love the book.
Yeah.
I loved everything about the book.
Thumbs up.
Yeah. I give it a good thumbs up. Yeah. At least one, if not two, but one thumbs up. So all right.
2 becomes pretentious. So.
Yeah, kind of. I got to start using big toes and shit. And if I run out of big toes, you don't want to know what. Never mind. So all right. So to read this book, or at least to tell you about it, kind of got to get you in the mood, so to speak, right? So I want you at home, you guys listening to this, who are wondering what this book's about, I want you to think about kind of a Tolkien-esque world. And in this world, there's this mountain range. Imagine you've got a nice little map as good stories like this are wont to have. And on this map, you see a line of mountains. There's this mountain range, and they're called the Titan Spines. And nestled deep within these mountains, there's this kind of tremulous mountain range, and there's a castle, and it's just, it's kind of a keep. It's really fortified. It's a place of legend, so to speak. And this ancient fortified castle is at one time, it's Helm's Deep, right? Like it's kind of where you want to go if you're a warrior making your last stand. This is where you went. So you could back yourself into a corner and fend off the bad guys until you were ultimately victorious. And that plan had about a 99% success rate. But the problem with 99% success rates is that 1% comes around. Yeah. It's going to work right up until it doesn't. And now the place is just kind of known as the Broken Keep. Like that's if you look on the map, that's going to say the Broken Keep. And it's become the seat of power, so to speak, for this evil warlord named Decade. And he's got this legion of like shitty war boys known as the Harbingers. And from this base, Decade he's just spread terror all across the land. There's these 3 great kingdoms that are kind of partnershiped, and he's just raining down hell on them. But finally, the people have had enough. The rabble has been roused, and they're pissed. They're just not happy, and they've some of them have just bulked up and they've grabbed their armor and their swords and their knights and they're ready to go. Some people have just grabbed their pitchforks or like a spork, and they've decided to roll in there, and they're going to take these fuckers down. They're taking their kingdom back. They're tired. They're going to spork them to death, man, and they're going to take the Broken Keep back, and they're going to end this dude. And leading this legion of men, of just this horde of angry villagers, so to speak, these champions, is their greatest champion, like that they're all rallying behind. And this figure is maybe not what you would stereotypically expect, right? Like this figure, her name is Bloody Bliss, and man, she's curvaceous, she's bombacious, she's hell with a sword, and like all good barbarians, because she's a barbarian, right? She's a big fan of the loincloth. That's really all she's working with.
She'd be wearing armor if she wasn't a barbarian.
Yeah, if she wasn't, at least she would have like a fuzzy loincloth. Yeah. And she's got her own little group of people, right? Like this is, very D&D-esque. Mm-hmm. She's got her party that she rolls with, and her little faithful companions. One of them is named Vor the Lion, and he's like, I want you to imagine He-Man. Yeah. Very, very much a He-Man. Also a fan of the Battle Briefs. Yeah. And Gaspar Rogue, which, by the way, I love the name, Gaspar. Yeah. And Gaspar Rogue is to his namesake, he is a rogue. Yeah. And so together with these guys, they've cleaved a path through these Harbingers, and they're covered in blood. She's smiling ear to ear. She's loving it. She's digging it. This is her thing. And just like that, takes old Decade's head off. It's gone. She beheads this fucker, and they win. Yay! It's the game is over. The villagers win.
It was a short story.
Yeah,
decapitation.
Shrek goes back to his swamp. That's just they're done, right? Except that's not what this story is. That's not the end. This book asks the question: what happens to these heroes after the greatest battles of their life are over? What do they do with themselves? Like once these monumentous feats are accomplished, I mean, how do you go? What do you do next? How do you go away from that? Like, I mean, do you just go kind of like sit down and just contemplate your days? And that's what this book is looking to explore is what do these heroes do when their battle's won, when the fight is over? And so many, many, many years later, the book takes us to this place, and there's a woman, and she's standing on a cliff. It's this very snowbound mountain. It's cold, it's icy, and this woman is our hero. It's Bloody Bliss. They don't try to bury the lead. And she's standing over this gorge, and she's contemplating throwing herself off of it. She's thinking about ending it all. Like, she's tired. She's old. Again, her battles are won. She maybe is not feeling as useful as she did at one time, but she decides in her wisdom that today's not the day. It's not time. She's not done with her mountain yet. She's still got some things to do. And she kind of like just kind of walks away from the cliff, which at that point I was like, okay, this could have took a real dark turn. So somewhere below, somewhere like halfway up the mountain, maybe it's at the base, I don't know, there's this trio of people, and they're pushing their horses through the snow. They're driving up the mountain, climbing slowly. And these folks you can tell they're very much on edge. Every little gust of wind, every little bird that pops out of a bush, it's got to be something that's about to jump out at them, right? Like they're very nervous. They're a very nervous folk. And this trio is actually made up of a father and his daughter who have paid this guide to carry them up the mountain, to show them the way, because they've heard legend, if you will, that there is a crone who lives on this mountain. And she kind of haunts the place. She's got this mysticism made around her that's come up and really has kept folks away from the mountain. And they get about halfway up this mountain, and the guy decides like he regrets he's made bad decisions. He has deep seated regrets in doing this. He's terrified.
He's like the carriage driver driving the people to Dracula's castle.
Yeah, 100%.
Get out.
He's just kind of like fuck it. I'm done. I can't do this. I'm not feeling it. The mountain's haunted. There's a woman. She's a witch, and she's a shapeshifter. So I've heard. And your money's not worth it. I need to go, man. I can hear her stalking us right now. She's circling us. And yeah, he's about to abandon this party, man. He's about to hightail it back down the mountain to safety. But before he can, just boom, it's too late. A big ass bear comes out of nowhere, as they're wont to do, and just takes a big old chunk out of this poor bastard's neck. And the dad and the daughter, they're not the kind of people that just sit down in the snow and like they're not just going to take this ursine beat down. They kind of spring into action. So the daughter just whips out a sword, like she's not playing, and she's just about ready to just go into this bear and like she knows she doesn't stand a chance, but she wants to be a warrior, man, and she just about there, and she hears somebody yell, "Get off my damn mountain!" And right when she's like this kind of like she's like, huh? And she looks around and there's this old woman just pops out of the snow just with a tomahawk and just goes after this bear, man. She sinks this battle axe into this bear's head. But this bear ain't no punk, cuz he's not playing with it. You don't just get to like shove an axe into him and just walk away. So he goes for it, man. This bear throws
that may fly with some bears.
Not this motherfucker.
Not this bear.
Like he's got grizzly pride, bro.
Wrong day.
So he goes ahead. He just goes ahead and throws like a left hook and knocks her smooth on her ass. And you would think getting punched by a bear it'd be a good cue to like exit stage left, but nope, not this woman. Nope. Remember, this is like she's already having a pretty bad day. This excites our Silver Lady of the Mountain, dude. Remember, she was literally moments ago just talking herself off of a ledge. Like we say that phrase, like, "Oh man, I had to talk myself out of a ledge." She did it in real life. So she's like, this is the morning she's having. And dude, look. This lady's got cojones, huge cojones. Not only does she have huge cojones, she's got a big stick that she carries with her, and she just shoves this giant stick through this bear, which has got to take a lot of upper body strength, you would think, because it's not her day, man. But she's looking at this bear, and she's like, "This bear could end it for me. So, like, let me just go at this bear. Like, okay, are you the thing that's going to take me away? I'm tired, so let me go beat this. Like, maybe the bear will kill me, but it doesn't because she previously inserts stick into bear and bear dies. Today's not her day, right? Which is cool. But
insert stick into bear. That's a different podcast.
It's got to be, right. Also on that podcast. But she still kind of wants these people to get the fuck off her mountain, right? Like she's like, this is not a celebratory thing. Like these people are like, "Oh, thank God you saved us," and she's like, "Oh, you're still here? Like I told you, get off my mountain. Like go away." That is until she recognizes the dad. Lo and behold, it's our old buddy Gaspar Rogue. And age has not treated him well, so he's old. And Gaspar has traveled all this way to find his old friend, the greatest warrior the world has ever known, because. Bad news, right? The monster that has terrorized the world all those years back, the one that they thought they defeated, Decayed, he's back. How? Who knows? He's back to his old habits. He's came through and he's destroyed Gaspar's village, lots of villages. He's just wreaking havoc again. And this doesn't make sense to Bliss, right? Like she killed him. You heard the popping sound I made earlier. That was his head. You don't just get to like lose your head.
But you got to kill all the Horcruxes too.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe you have to like throw a ring into a mountain or something. I don't know.
Something.
But she just doesn't understand this. Like it's like she killed him. But Gaspar wants her to like saddle up, so to speak. He like, you got to come back to the fight. Like you're the only one. You're the only one who can do this. But she's done with that life. She's an old woman. She's that life took everything from her. Literally. I mean, as she's saying that, she goes and she stands over a grave. She's just like, everything is done for me. Like, I don't want this anymore. I just want to live on my mountain. And she doesn't know if she can bring herself to pick back up her sword again. And that's kind of where the story closes. There's a little bit more in there. And inevitably,
she's going to, right? Like, we get that. But she really has to make this choice, this really hardened choice. And she's not only making it, like, this isn't just your average person, oh, I'm a fierce warrior now, and I've got to go do this thing. This is a woman saying, oh, I've got to live up to what I used to be. I don't know if I'm adequate enough anymore. But also I could be the last hope. I don't know, but I don't want this. So that's where the book ended. I had thoroughly enjoyed this story. As far as the actual story goes, I felt like the pacing, I don't know about you guys, the pacing was a little bit off for me, which that's not necessarily uncommon for a Dark Horse book, right? Like they do that. These are people who don't have a large catalog. They're still learning these things. I couldn't do it. It's a hard skill to master, especially in sequential art. But also the book it's a little bit derivative, and I think it was purposefully done so that they get a little bit of credit for me. But I mean, Culver, he's not dipping deep into the well of creativity here, right? Like he's giving you these very tropey elements. He wants you to be thinking about Lord of the Rings. He wants you to be thinking about all these movies that we've mentioned, that we've alluded to, just in telling you the essence of the story. And so, like, I think when it's purposefully done, you get a little bit more credit, but it's still kind of derivative. And so I kind of rolled my eyes at that, but some of that was also in the art design. Because, like, the bad guy, this guy Decay, he looks like one of the Witch Kings. He's got the same mask,
and his name is Decay.
Yeah,
he's got skull knee pads.
Right. So, did you guys pick? I mean, did that affect the way that you read into the story? And again, it didn't diminish my enjoyment. I've read this book twice. I loved it.
So, when it comes to fantasy stories, most of the tropes have been written so many times. Mm-hmm. That if you read fantasy enough, you always feel like you're rereading something you've previously read, which is why a lot of times I have to take a break from fantasy and come back to it, because it's one of my favorite genres, but for that reason. But if it's told well,
yeah,
then I can look past that, and I felt that this was told well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really like, one of the tropes I really dig in general, let alone fantasy, is revisiting old warriors that no longer, they've gone past their physical ability to fight, and how they mentally manage that.
King Conan.
Yeah, and then them coming back into that and having to rely on all that experience and skill versus physical, a bit more the physical ability that they used to have. That's a trope that I really enjoy. I don't think I've ever read one where it was a female was cast as that, so that's what has me interested in this. My issues with the book, I wish that they'd have put, more thought into her costume design, frankly. I mean, they put her in a bathing suit.
Well,
and I was like, well, I wish they'd have really given her a more iconic look than just putting her in a bathing suit. I really wish there'd been more put into that.
And I think that's fair. But again, I would say derivative comic story.
That's what
you draw some little fish scales on there, and it's Red Sonja's.
Yeah,
outfit. Like there's no,
and that's what I mean is that it's like, well, Red Sonja's been done. I mean, I just wish they'd have put because it just looked to me like he gave no thought to her costume whatsoever, because that is just a straight up bikini. It looks like you could buy at Walmart. I was like, so I was kind of bummed out by that, but. Overall, I'm interested to see where this goes. And I read the writer and the artist both wrote little paragraphs in the back, and they basically say the story is going to go places you don't expect it to.
Good.
So, I'm like, okay, all right, well, let's see what happens here.
Well, I could see from where it's set up, there's two possibilities, right? One, she picks up the sword and she goes and does battle with the Cade again. Two, she becomes the mentor to the young girl and teaches her, which is, means that it's the girl's story, her hero's journey, because that hero's journey is always you get a mentor that then has to die for you to have to do it.
And I don't think that's an either or situation. I think both of those
things could happen.
It depends on. So that's one of those things I always wonder about in comics, because in first issues you get a lot of setup. Like there's a lot to the story. I mean, there's her suicide pact with herself, essentially. There's her relationship with whoever is buried in that grave. There's her needing to be the person that she used to be. I mean, there's a lot. There's leading the young girl, and it's going to be hard to explore every single one of those things in a 12-issue series. Maybe you could get that in 18. And so it's always, I wonder how many issues are planned for this, because that's really going to dictate how much they're allowed to explore.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a very, very good first issue. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't mind the normal fantasy tropes if they're told well.
Sure.
And I felt like this was, and I felt like the art was good. I have the same complaint you have is, but again, if she's supposed to be a barbarian, barbarians don't believe in armor because it slows them down. So there is that concept, but it feels like every woman ever that they draw in fantasy is,
Yeah.
She's scantily clad. And that is that.
And it's fine, but it's just a trope for fantasy art.
That's where some of the, like, homaging it to Roy Thomas's work, that, like, I will give it a pass, because I do think on that, like, you get away with it by being derivative. Now, what I don't want to see is a new story that comes out, like, this is like the Boundless stuff, and that's not necessarily knocking the Boundless creators. Like, you're doing work, it's not my stuff, but you're giving new stories you're not putting much work into connecting it to these, like, homaging. You're not doing that work. You're just kind of giving new stories with characters that are vaguely based on them, and it's just exploitation of the female figure. That's not what this is.
Yeah, I didn't feel like it was.
And so as long as you are doing it in a way that I think gives credit to, or throws back to, these stories that are no longer per se politically correct, but they do have value in history, and especially in comics history, you get away with it. Whereas if you do it now for no reason, like, you don't tie it back into those things, then I just think you're being exploitive and kind of lazy. And that's just my opinion on things. Like I say, people have, and if you're reading a smut book for the smut, then I've got nothing, like, there's no complaint. Like, if you're reading it, like, I watch porn. I think everybody watches porn. I'm not watching porn to not get my rocks off, right? Like,
to see how they treat people well.
Yeah, right. Like, I don't need
do they?
I don't need that from that. But if I'm wanting a story with nuance and a story that really has something to say, then I need something more. And in order to do those figures, I need you to tie it back into those historical books.
Well, I mean, fantasy in general is about male fantasy anyways,
they are. They're
right? I mean,
way too often, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in general, you've got the really bulked up man that in his loincloth that is
holding on to the thigh. You've got a woman.
Yeah, I mean, it's
that's how Matt's wedding photos look, by the way.
Is it? That's awesome.
If only.
So, no, I mean, so in one hand, I feel like as a culture we've maybe moved past that, but on the other hand, it is part of fantasy.
Yeah, genre. For sure. And I don't mind. Like I said, I don't mind it when it's presented that way.
And I don't mind if you can take into context, like I said, that she is a barbarian, and by belief they don't wear a lot of armor because it slows them down.
Yeah,
and and the whole berserker. Yeah.
And she does go into a berserker rage. So.
Well, and at least then the battle's happening like someplace that it looks like it's at least warm and she's sweating. Like, they don't have her on the snowy mountain in a bikini.
I wish, if they're going to go that route, and this is why I feel like it was kind of lazy, is, they put her in this bikini. If he'd have just added some war paint to give it the berserker, at least image, that have been, it would have added so much, and it'd been so easy to do that.
Yeah.
But I do think that, like, I think you'd stepped away for a second. I mentioned that, this was a rabble roused cause. Like, these people didn't have kingdoms, that these were peasants that picked up the sword. I mean, you've got the He-Man-esque partner, Vor the Lion, that's there with her. And he's essentially just in battle briefs too. Like, he's just got his little fuzzy bikini on.
Yeah.
So in the same thing, like, he doesn't have any of that war paint. So I think that they were, I agree with you. I would love to have seen the other design. I do think in their defense, they were just trying to show, hey, these aren't people that have a lot of resources. Their sword is the resource. The muscle is the resource.
Yeah.
I mean, there's reasons you can justify it for sure within the context of the story.
Now, the art I really dug.
I do too.
As far as the design work goes, I see a lot of Daniel Warren Johnson in some of this design, especially that the spread where you see Decane with his, like, he looked like he could be a figure out of Murder Falcon in the way that was designed.
Yeah.
I thought that design was great.
Knee pads.
It was fun. I love this scratchy form that a lot of folks are doing, but it's not so loose that it loses. There's a little bit of, like, Mac chatter in here too. It doesn't lose the cinematic aspect, so to speak, of it. Yeah. So I dug it.
I felt like I was watching the opening chapter to a Conan type movie or a Red Sonja type movie, and that I think that's intentional on their part.
Mm-hmm, I'm sure
the camera angles that they chose for it were great. So again, I give it like I've got 2 thumbs. I'll give it a solid one of them. I will check out the second issue. I think it's really exciting that what they decide to do in the second issue is really going to dictate whether or not I continue to read this. And I'm going to go from there, which I think is fair.
Sure. I'm on it for, the time being. Yeah. Again, it was a solid enough book to keep me coming back for more. And again, thumbs up. I enjoyed the art. I enjoyed the story. I think the story has potential on where it's going to go besides the obvious.
Yeah.
And that will be the interesting part.
Yep. Full show. Well, we'll start with Matt this week, man. What are you bringing to the table for us? I'm excited about this. I see it.
My book of the week, this is an unusual read. This is a biography done in comic form. This is called The Abominable Mr. Seabrook by Joe Allman. Allman, probably how you pronounce that. Ollmann. This is about a writer-journalist who introduced zombies into the popular lexicon of the United States. Think Hunter S. Thompson. Mm-hmm. He's one of these kind of writers. Okay. Embeds himself.
Did a lot of acid.
And no, because it wasn't around.
Oh, well, okay.
But he did everything else that was
opiates.
Most significantly, he was an absolute hopeless drunk.
Okay.
I mean,
I respect that.
This is a fascinating read. So he was born in 1884, died in 1945. His life, he had several opportunities to have a wealthy lifestyle. Mm-hmm. He was handed several opportunities by family, friends, and just family to just walk into very easy money. And he did that and was absolutely miserable. He seemed to be one of these people that did not care about money at all. He wanted to write. He was very accomplished for his time, but he had extremely low self-esteem. Mm-hmm. And somebody asked him at one point, they're like, you're very successful. Why do you think what you do is relatively no good? And he started saying, well, how do you think the second best pianist, how do you think he felt about himself standing next to Beethoven? He just said he thinks what he did was relatively drivel. But anyway,
seems to be an artist syndrome.
Yeah, he's just just your typical. I mean, it's your somewhat stereotypical writer. Alcoholic, isolated, but he sought out very unusual circumstances and very unusual people because he liked to experience them. And sometimes he would write about them, sometimes he wouldn't. Mm-hmm. He found himself to be friends with Aleister Crowley at one point and fully believed the guy really was a magician. Mm-hmm. And, there's some demonstrations. He writes about seeing Aleister Crowley do these things and he couldn't explain them.
Well, first of all, so that's because Aleister Crowley was a wizard. Yeah. So let's establish that. Yeah. I'm going to let you finish, but.
So he, but he had heard talk, somewhere about zombies and, in Haiti. Mm-hmm. So he decided he just goes to Haiti, goes to a village and he hangs out at the local drinking areas, talking to people, throwing this, hey, I have interest in zombies. Nobody will talk to him. And he talked about, being a white man in Haiti. He was treated like the black people were in America. Yeah. So it was a really interesting experience to be, segregated against being a white man because he was white. And everybody talked down to him and nobody trusted him, that poor. Well, eventually he hangs out long enough to where somebody's like, okay, I'll take you and show you a zombie. And they go into the sugar canes, the plantation, and sure enough, he meets somebody. He describes meeting this person that what they call one of the zombies. And he walks up to him and starts trying to talk to him, and the guy's just staring right through him. No, doesn't even blink. He's just not there. And he learns how that happens. And he writes about it. That was his first big story when he came back. Mm. But meanwhile, his personal life, he was married for about 6 years. But again, he was a hopeless drunk. Mm-hmm. drinks in the morning. And just getting completely blitzed, crippling drunk. He also, at one point, he lets it be known that he has been obsessed with women in bondage since he was a child. Mm-hmm. And his wife was one of the most patient people maybe ever born. The stuff that she tolerated. And, and he was not a mean drunk. He was not abusive at all whatsoever. And every time his wife would have enough and say, I can't do this anymore, he would just be like, no, you can't leave me. I need you. And she couldn't leave him because she really believed that without somebody in his life, he would kill himself. He could not function daily without help. Anyway.
Such a hard position to imagine to be in.
Yes.
Because she loved that. You love that person, right?
She did. And again,
to your own detriment.
You're watching this person destroy themselves, and they're pathetic. Mm-hmm. How can you walk away from that when they're not? Again, he is not mean. Mm-hmm. He's loving to her. He's just drunk all the time, and he's obsessed with this bondage stuff. Well, this bondage stuff, it goes on to be just fascinating. Now, for the most part, he wasn't into bondage like he liked to beat up women. He just had this thing about women being handcuffed and tied up. At one point, he goes to France. They move to France. He's going to live amongst the artist community. They have parties. People come into his parties, and he has hired women to just hang around in chains or tied to the ceiling. And they're just there like a piece of furniture. And he said, what was interesting about the French is they could just walk amongst the party like these women aren't even there. Or some of them walk up and just comment about, oh, what are you doing? What do you have going on here? He's like, man, the French were not up. You could do anything over there.
They're not very uptight.
Does it say what years he was in France in the book?
Oh, I'm sure it does.
And the reason I ask is because there was a time when, Hemingway and Gertrude Stein were all living in Paris and the expatriate movement. But I can't remember off the top of my head, and shame on me for it, but if that was post World War II or post World War I.
This is post World War I.
Okay.
Yeah. He dies in the early years of World War II.
Right. Well, I was saying specifically for Gertrude Stein and them when they were there.
The episodes of this bondage stuff is really interesting. He just liked having women tied up around the house just as he was working. He'd be writing, and as long as he knew there was a woman somewhere in the house in bondage, that was like his muse. Mm-hmm. It gave him comfort. At one point, while he's living in France, he befriends this photographer, calls him up. I'm going out of town. I need you to watch my apartment for a few days. I need you to stay here and watch my apartment. Friend goes over, and they're talking about it. He's like, and then there's this woman chained to the banister of the stairs. Mm-hmm. And his friend's like, well, what's going on here? And he's like, oh, yeah, her. I'm paying her to be chained up and act like a dog. Yeah, no big deal. Don't worry about it. This is, nothing weird's going on here.
And as long as it's consensual, I think.
Yeah, and he's, so of course he goes out of town. The friend, and he's like, yeah, but you can't let her go. I'm paying her for this. So she's got to stay chained up while I'm gone. I need to know that. Friend's like, yeah. Goes out of town. They immediately unchain her. Just bring her to the table to eat dinner. And they start talking to her. And she's like, oh, I've done a lot weirder stuff for money. Mm-hmm. And the wife of his friend is like, so does he pay you for? And she goes, oh, you mean to fuck? No, not at all.
Yeah.
I just hang around. She goes, I think he's impotent is what she did. And they're just like, what the? Another episode, after him and his wife divorce, again, they're still in constant contact. She goes to visit him one day. He answers the door, middle of the day. He's completely just blitzed. They're talking, and she hears a moan in the background. And she says, what is that? Opens the door. There's a woman bound on the floor. And she's like, oh my gosh, is that woman okay? And he's like, huh? Yeah, I better go check on her. But don't worry. And he opens the door even more. And there's an old woman sitting there. She goes, I hired a nurse to make sure that everything's okay. And there's this old woman sitting there smoking, looking at this woman on the floor. Yeah, this is a fascinating train wreck this man was. Mm-hmm. So, but, I highly recommend. I do not remember how I came across this, to be honest with you.
I don't know, but that's a Caleb book.
This is an amazing read. It's an amazing read.
Yeah, it sounds like one I'd like to.
I'm just scratching the surface of this guy's life. But this is the only. I mean, this was interesting for me. I've never read a biography done in comic book form.
Oh, and well, it's published by Drawn and Quarterly. Drawn and Quarterly is one of the best. Them and Fantagraphics are one of the best publishers for that. And Drawn and Quarterly, who I got to hang out with a lot of those guys when I went to Portland. And they're publishing work by Peter Bagg, who's doing a lot of biographies of just everybody. He does a biography of Margaret Sanger. He does a biography of Laura Ingalls Wilder's daughter, who, by the way, actually ghost writ a bunch of Laura Ingalls Wilder's stuff, it turns out. He does a prominent African-American baseball players, and he does all these biographies in comic form. And it's Peter Bagg, who was a big, he was a big R. Crumb alkalite. He was with Weird Tales and all of those. So if you like that, you should go check those out. I would highly encourage you to. But man, I love Drawn and Quarterly. Love that publisher.
Yeah, this was a great read, man. I couldn't wait to see what was on the next page. This guy was something else. Yeah, it's amazing he lived as long as he did.
I was looking up the dates. I wonder if he ever connected to William Marston, the Wonder Woman creator, who was into some of the very similar things, who had addiction issues, who was into bondage, but not. Again, it was agreed upon. There was contracts and good consideration was given. But kind of that same world. I wonder if they ever cross paths.
It's not referenced in here, so I would assume not. Yeah. Something like that, I would assume would definitely be referenced in this work. This guy spent 10 years researching this.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's weird how many brilliant people have those sort of kind of. I'm not going to even call that a fetish because being bound up, bondage.
It's a kink. I mean,
it's
his level was fetish.
Yeah.
There's definitely, I mean, his level was this because what he did was not recreational.
Right.
It was constant in his life. Like I said,
it was there just in the background while that's a little different. Yeah. But Mozart with poop and his fascination with poop, I mean, it's weird, these things that are out there with some of these different artistic types.
I wonder what the day rate for something like that is.
The what?
The day rate, like how much they're getting paid a day to be chained to a banister.
Yeah,
because that's an option at this point. Just throwing that out into the world, like, look, a good $50,000 a year, I'll do some. Like, just don't touch me. My husband won't let that, but he'll let me sit on the stairs with handcuffs.
Yeah, So,
and the podcast got shut down for solicitation.
Hey, there is nothing wrong with sitting on a stairwell with chains.
I'm playing. Interesting. I may have to pick that up.
I want to read that this summer, if you don't mind.
No, yeah, absolutely. I highly recommend it.
I know we were talking earlier. Your to be read stack is stupid, as is I think all of ours. Yeah. But I do have some other biographies in comic form if you're ever interested.
Sure,
I can throw your way. I think you'll enjoy.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll go next, and we'll. I had a little bit of a hard time picking a book this week, but last book I happened to read,
Ep.98.
Yeah, no, kind of really nailed it for me. And this is a book that came out, I want to say, about a month ago. But for some reason, our local comic book store never got issue number 1.
Yeah.
They did get issue number 2, which I got from them. So then I went and bought issue number 1 on eBay because that was my option to get it at this point. And I'm glad I did. It is Something is Killing the Children by Boom Studios. James Tynion IV is writing it. Weather Del Adera is the artist. Miguel Muerto is the colorist, and letters by Andworld Design. So this book starts with 4, I'm going to guess, middle school aged boys having a sleepover at one of the houses, and they're playing Truth or Dare, which it never really goes into why 4 boys alone are playing Truth or Dare, but they are playing Truth or Dare.
I did that. I mean,
it's not. Yeah,
It is typically a game you think of being played like with boys and girls because that's when you dare to kiss.
Get it. Not that these boys couldn't have been gay or whatever, but they're certainly not portrayed that way.
No.
So,
yeah.
So, anyways, whatever. So they're playing Truth or Dare, and one of the kids, James, his name's James. He chooses Truth, and they ask him to tell the story of when he was most scared. Well, and he tells a story about going into the ravine near their houses, and there's a monster in there with, huge claws and teeth, and he ran off, and that was a nightmare. He's like, no, this was a true story. And so then the next kid comes up and he picks a dare. So of course they dare him to go into the ravine where the monster was. So of course all 4 kids, being kids and not really believing that it really happened, and they head on down to the ravine. Well, the kid that told the story, he's fine with it because he made the story up. It was actually a dream that he had. And he tells the police later, they always wanted me to tell them my nightmares. Yeah. So, so they go down there and he falls into the ravine. And then the next thing you know, he's sitting in a police station covered in blood, being talked to by a police officer. Now, he's not being interrogated. They're just asking him the information. Mm-hmm. It's never assumed that he killed these kids because they're killed in such a disturbing way that it would have been impossible for him to. I mean, they're ripped in half. They're cut to pieces. They're just completely obliterated, basically. And he says, well, I fell down the ravine, and then I heard my friends start screaming. And by the time I got back up there, this is what I found. Yeah. And the cop's like, okay, so no other information, and he's like, no. So they're all kind of assuming a bear attack, that something, something like that. Well, then it switches to these 2 young girls about the same age, middle school age, and one of them's got a bandana over her face that looks like giant teeth, and she's got 2 machetes in her hands, and she's covered in blood. And the other girl is there kind of not cowering behind her, but kind of like this girl was defending her. Mm-hmm. And so you don't really know what's going on, but the blonde girl gets a phone call, the machete girl, that's what I'm calling her because I haven't given her a name yet. She gets a phone call and she's like, okay, yeah, I can be there in 16 hours. And she writes down the name of the city that she's going to, which is Archer's Peak. And she writes it on her arm. I can be there in 16 hours, but that assumes I can get a shower. And she looks at the other girl and says, can I take a shower before I leave? And the girl's like, sure, my parents won't be home for a while. So anyways, skips ahead, goes back to the other kid, and now he's being bullied in school. It's been 2 weeks since the murder of his friends, or the killing of his friends. And of course, this one kid's blaming him for it and trying to bully him. And you did it, the guy wouldn't kiss you, so you took him into the woods and killed them all, and blah, blah, blah. And finally the dude, he just tells them all to shut the fuck up. He screams at. Well, then the principal calls him into his office and he's like, well, what am I going to do with you? And he's like, well, I guess you're supposed to call my dad now. And the guy's like, well, I don't know. Why didn't you kick the guy's ass? The principal tells him this. What? And he's like, I know I shouldn't be saying that, but if anybody ever needs their ass kicked, it's that kid. Why didn't you do it?
Finally, an adult saying what needs to be said.
And then the principal just has this nervous breakdown. He's like, I'm only a couple of years out of school. I'm not qualified to deal with the shit that's going on in this school. I can't deal with this. There's kids getting murdered, and he starts crying. Yeah. And the kid's like, well, I like you better than the old principal. He never cussed when I was in his office, and he certainly never cried, And so the kid leaves, and he's listening to his phone, and his dad's leaving a message. Listen, I had to take your sister to practice, and I'm not going to be able to get there for you. Just head home and take care of yourself. Well, so he just kind of sits down on the curb, and the blonde girl shows up. Mm-hmm. And she sits down, and she sits down. She says, hey, tell me the real story here. The kid's like, I already told the cops. And she's like, yeah, I read that report. I want the real story. Whatever you say, I'm going to believe you. So he tells her what really happened, and you get this really violent depiction. He climbs up the ravine, and he grabs his friend, and he's cut in half with his guts hanging out, and blood everywhere. And then it shows the monster. And it's a giant monster with big teeth and claws, just like he had described. And so she picks up their phone and she calls it in, and says, yeah, we got an E7 monster alert and blah, blah, blah. And the kid's like, well, what's this all mean? She goes, you got a monster in your woods, and I'm here to take care of it. And that's how it ends. Okay. So really, really good setup book. I haven't read issue number 2 yet. Yeah. But man, I love this book. Tinian just once again has me hooked on a book from the very first issue, like he did with The Woods. Mm-hmm. The first issue of The Woods just drew me in, and I loved it. And he tells a scary story in time for spooky season. Mm-hmm. And, I know Halloween's over, but we got the holidays coming up, so it's still spooky season for another couple of months.
There's nothing more terrifying than Christmas.
Yeah. But between his ability to build a character and story depth in a single issue and the art in this book, oh my God. I mean, it's just done so well. I haven't ever seen any work before by Deladera. Mm-hmm. But man, and I looked him up on Comics Database, and he's done quite a few books, but it's maybe been an issue here, an issue there, kind of a fill-in artist at this point. So I'm glad to see him getting a, solid book to get his feet under.
Yeah.
And colored just absolutely beautifully as well by Muerto.
Well, he's paired with an amazing writer. So like this is your foot in the door. This is your big chance.
He nailed it. I mean, you've got the issue, but the line work's just absolutely fantastic in this book.
I'm hearing really, really great things about it, man.
Everything about this book was good, and I suggest everybody should read it's the best horror book I've read since Harrow County.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah.
That's big doings.
Yeah. It's the best one I've read in quite some time. And Gideon Falls is great, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
This has a different feel than Gideon's Fall.
Yeah.
This is more of a straight up monster horror.
Gideon Falls is more cerebral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed everything about this book, and, just thank God for Tinian because he saved the day for me. I was really struggling. Not that I haven't read good books this week, but I don't always want to talk about a book in the middle of a run or, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an issue number 1. But at the start of a new story arc or something like that. And I just wasn't, the number ones I had read, we've kind of talked a lot about the X-Men books lately, and they were both good, but I wanted something a little different. And this book certainly did that for me.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I will say I don't like the way it happened, but I'm excited about Tinian getting on Batman. Because he's the one taking over the Batman title, from what I understand.
Yeah,
and he's good.
Well, he's been being groomed for a long time to take over Batman. Yeah. I think that was probably the plan all along. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, what are we talking about? 20 issues that they took from King.
Well, and he's still getting them. He's just getting them in a different title.
So,
but he's such a good, solid writer, man. Yeah. Like his detective work was amazing. Like you said, The Woods is spectacular. And we need a good horror story. And this is where, like I was talking earlier, I really am. Other than a few books, soups aren't exciting me. And there's such a broader world to comics and superheroes.
I legit love the creator-owned stuff, where I can go through and pick different genres to read.
Yeah.
And to kind of go back to what we talked to at the opening, is it's not necessarily that I don't love the books. It's just, if I'm 3 or 4 books in and it hasn't held my interest, I'm just like,
there's other stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of comics right now, is there is so much good stuff out there that I don't have to stay on a book that's not holding my attention.
Yep.
I can move on to something else, and there's going to be something else just as good or better coming up behind it. So that's really the beauty of comics in today's day and age.
Well, it is. And I also like that we've kind of gotten out of the habit, at least on our show, that because a lot of us have libraries. A lot of us have boxes and boxes and boxes of comics. And I think Matt's done
Some of us have storage.
It's just our storage rooms. We've gotten to where we'll still talk about new stuff, but I think we've gotten more into we feel more comfortable going back and reading things that have been written, years ago. At some point, I probably very likely to talk about Sandman, or I might actually drop one of the issues of Lone Wolf on here. And Matt's brought Conan, and he's bringing stuff from the what is it, the mid '80s British stuff. And when you were talking about martial law, I like that we're talking about that, because in many ways, the industry is propped up, or at least is fortified by independent comic shops. And those independent comic shops still make a lot of money on back issues. So I feel like as long as we're still talking about those things, we're not only talking about the beauty and the joy of comics and the evolution of the medium and everything, but we're also encouraging people who listen to the show, but people that we're friends with, to look, don't just go to the shelf where they've got this week's books. I mean, we talk about New Comic Book Day at the end of every show, but
go find out good shit that's been written in the past 80 years of comics being a valid and viable medium of storytelling, and read it. I mean, we're sitting in front of, at our local comic shop where there's 4 racks of just trade paperbacks that range from, there's Church and State, the Cerebus stuff from Dave Sim. There's stuff that's Ditko over there, but there's new stuff that's Batman. There's just so much. There's Bacchus by Eddie Campbell. Like, there's just so much to go back and read, and you really do yourself a disservice as a fan of the medium and somebody who enjoys the comics if you just stick to the new stuff.
Yep. I will never run out of comics to read. I will never run out of not only is there, 50 to 60 new books a week coming out to keep your interest, but there's so much back matter to go back and read if you so choose to. And if you don't, I know we've kind of got off on a tangent here.
I love tangents.
But if you don't know what to read next, I guarantee you the person working at your local comic book store can help. And if they can't, somebody hanging out in that store can.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be able to give you, hey, well, what do you like? And here, let's find something. And that's what I love about comics.
I do, man.
I to bring it full circle back around, I love this comic because it's not necessarily a traditional horror or a traditional superhero comic.
Right.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with them. I love the superhero comics too, but I love these kinds of books that take you in a different direction, and when it's done with good art, it's just that much better. So
facts makes me excited.
Yeah, and I try to pick up Tinian's work every time I know it's happening. I'll get on. He's one of those creators I tend to follow. Not maybe at the level of Lemire, but he is one of those creators that I tend to try and get everything that he does.
Lemire ain't batting 1,000 either lately, so
he's doing pretty good.
He's doing
one miss.
That's fair. That's true. So I know we've been talking about getting away from superhero comics and stuff, which is, I'm going to sound like a hypocrite, which I often do. I often am. I admit that about myself.
Well, we also talked that there's nothing wrong.
Not zero things wrong. I actually read a superhero book from Marvel, from one of the big 2 books that I thoroughly am enjoying. And that's the one I want to talk about to you guys this week. And I don't know if either one of y'all are still on this title. And I know Matt started on it but wasn't feeling it, so he jumped off. And that's Savage Avengers, number 6.
I'm still on 7, it. I haven't read this issue, but
yeah, I'm not on it.
Not feeling it, and that's perfectly fair. But I really, this is a sleeper hit for me that I'm really enjoying. And it's written by Jerry Duggan, and this particular issue was drawn, and it made my heart happy when I saw it because I wasn't expecting it. But it's drawn by Patch Zurcher, who I'm a big fan of. I love that man's art. Colors by Javier Tatigla and letters by Travis Lanham. So this issue kind of gets us started. It's a new arc, so to speak, for the series. Again, like I said, really, really surprised me with how much I've been enjoying this. I didn't expect it. It's really been a story that came out of left field because it could have been one of those stories that it's like a throwaway series that just kind of capitalizes on the fact that Conan is back at Marvel. And in some ways it seemed like it was going to do that, but I personally think that it's evolved away from that, or it could have been a throwaway story for any number of reasons, right? Like those happen quite often. We get them, sometimes they're just kind of this mishmash of characters that are basically doing nothing. They're just kind of sitting on the Marvel shelves. So creators grab them and attach them to a popular figure at the time. And they put out very formulaic, very boring stories that readers we're gonna forget. But that's not what I feel like is happening here. I think Duggan's been very, very good at pacing out the story, so he keeps dropping these little plot turns that keep me coming back, and then he leans into the ridiculousness of it all, and he's finding a good balance between these larger than life characters that in the story, for the story's sake, they take themselves seriously, but I mean the meta thing of it is that they are comic relief, and that comic relief inevitably boils out of their juxtaposition to each other. And think about it. You've got, in this particular series, you've got the Punisher and Conan going on a walkabout together through Antarctica. Like there's some really deep conversation that could actually spill out of that. I mean, you've got, and I'm not joking, like at these two, once they get past the dick swinging, they could actually have a very serious conversation about all kinds of things. But there's also this hyper machismo, like I said, dick measuring, that it's going to happen. And Duggan just nails it. Like he just gets it right. He walks that fine line out of it. This issue kind of opens up, again, it's the start of a new arc, and you get kind of this quick and dirty history of a character that, for my taste, is He's one of Marvel's more interesting street-level characters. He's underutilized, and that's Brother Voodoo. I love this character's design. I love reading about him from old stuff, new stuff. He excites me when I see him in the book. And you get kind of this little 5-panel walkthrough of his history and how he becomes who he is, his relationship with his brother, and all of this is happening while he's having a conversation, and again, one of the reasons I love this book, and I'll give it some credit, maybe that's undue, so to speak, one of my favorite villains of Conan lore of all time. Who's been at the epicenter of this entire series so far? And do you know who it is? You want to guess?
Thothamon?
Nope, not him. Good guess. Great guy. Not great guy, but great character. He's a bastard.
He's a good guy. I kind of like him. I'd like to hang out with him, have a couple of beers.
No, man, it's
maybe some cheese and crackers,
right? Fondue with Thothamon, yes. No, I'm gonna tell you who it is. It's Kulan Gath. Are you familiar with Kulan Gath?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So he's the great dark wizard. He's been a thorn in Conan's side for about 60 years now. Ever since Roy Thomas and Barry Windsor Smith just ripped him out, screaming into the world way back in Conan the Barbarian number 14, which is where his first appearance was for all you collectors out there. But why? Why is Brother Voodoo hanging out with this guy? He's an asshole. He's a bastard. And you might be asking yourself these questions, and I did. Which it's a good question, right? And all of those answers you get from the first arc. So you should go read those first 6 issues. But basically, Voodoo, he agreed to go with Kulan Gath. And they escaped into this little pocket dimension after they all the Savage Avengers teamed up and they faced him down in the Savage Land. And the reason he did this is because they couldn't defeat him, but he was going to get away. So Voodoo's like, maybe I'm just going to attach myself to him and figure out how to stop him. Because he needs me. He held him prisoner, but Voodoo made the conscious choice to go with him for reasons, right? Like that, and that's what it's being uncovered here. There's kind of like a hostage spy situation going on, so to speak. Well, and because Gath has plans, right? And Voodoo and his necromancy powers, they play heavily into those plans. So essentially what he does is he gets Brother Voodoo to kill himself by taking a little poison pill that he sucks down with coffee. But look, it's voodoo, right? Like this happens from time to time. Actually, this is the second time he's died this week.
They're having coffee.
So they are good black coffee. They don't put there's no sugar, no cream.
Damn right.
And he just washes down this poison pill.
I mean, this is, I want to say, the second time Voodoo's died in this series.
This is the second, literally, I'm not joking. It's the second time Voodoo has died, in the week that they're having in here. Because, like I said, he raises the dead. He's got necromancy powers, and
I mean, his name is Voodoo.
Yeah, right. And so this happens. And
speaking of zombies,
again, it's tying into these things, man. There's some kismet happening on the show. And so Voodoo crosses to the other side with Kulan Gath's spirit. Like I said, they're in this sort of little pocket dimension, and in this pocket dimension, there is this kind of spirit virus, very Cthulhuian design. It's like a giant eyeball with tentacles. That is essentially Kulan Gath has been grooming, and the whole goal is to release this monster out into the world. And this monster's name is Shorma Gorath. And like I said, kind of a man's body with a man's lower face, but just giant eyeball, green tentacles coming out everywhere. It's a really, really cool killer design. And there's these other, I guess Kulan Gath has kidnapped other humans and brought them to this world. And he's like, Brother Voodoo, you stand there and behold, watch what happens. And this monster just goes after one of these prisoners, and his hair tentacles plunge into this guy's eyeballs, and he just goes to town on him. And when he pops up, this guy, one big giant eyeball, more tentacles. It's a virus, it's spreading. And this Shorma Gath he's going to release it into the world. And so you're getting an understanding of his plan. Brother Voodoo is starting to put the pieces together and how he's going to fix this. Or at least he's trying to figure it out. Is he going to be able to? And while all this is happening out in our world, right, out in the real world, while Voodoo and Gath they're going on their little interdimensional necro road trip, Elektra, who's been a figure prominent in this book, she's busy hunting down Voodoo's brother. Again, so Voodoo's brother, you get these 5 issues in the first panel, was a really, really, really powerful Hungan priest. And he was killed, but as in comics, he's not going to stay dead. He is resurrected by the Hand. You remember those bastards?
Yeah.
They have a really bad, the same people that brought her back, Elektra back, And so she's on this journey. She's trying to figure out what's going on with that. Like, she's been sent by Voodoo to hunt down her brother. And look, Elektra is dropping ninja bodies all over the place. Like, I mean, like,
as she do.
She is just passing out psi swords like she's Oprah. And Doctor Strange is there, but he's not really there because he's doing his astral projection thing from the safety of the Sanctum Sanctorum. And while she's just plunging blades and dropping ninjas, they're having this discussion about what went down in the Savage Land. And old Stevie, he's a little stressed, right? Like, because he knows what Kulan Gath is. He's not a small fry when it comes to magic, and he's faced Kulan Gath before, and he stopped him, but he's never been able to defeat him. Man, I first found Kulan Gath way back in the day, Volume 3 of the Avengers. That's when he first showed up. But he's got a long history. Like I said, Barry Windsor Smith, Roy Thomas, they've written a lot of stuff with him, so you go back and check that stuff out. I've never actually read the stories where Doctor Strange and him have gone head to head. I would love to, though. I'm not sure where those exist. If you know, I would love to find out, so please let me know. But he's never been able to defeat him. And Elektra's all like, what? Like, you know, how do you stop him? How do you stop Kulan Gath, but you don't defeat him? I don't understand. And so what Strange does, he explains. He gives her like a little sorcery 101. And Strange was able to separate Gath, to stop Gath. He was able to separate him from his totem, this amulet of power, from which
sounds like another Horcrux.
Exactly. From which Gath magics flow out of this amulet. And yeah, Elektra, she's not dumb by any means. She's smart. She's picking up on this. She's starting to understand. She's putting the pieces together. She's seen this before, right? And it's pretty much what happened in the Savage Land. They stripped Kulan Gath of his amulet. That's why he bolted. He got the fuck out and he took Voodoo with him. Because what his amulet is, and this should raise several eyebrows, this amulet is the third eye of Agamotto. Whoa, like that's big juju, right? And so, yeah, so him and once the third eye is ripped away from him and Voodoo split. And Strangey is all like, okay, cool, just bring me the amulet. This will all be Gucci. Just get that to me. I got this. And then Elektra's all like, slight problem in this situation. We don't have the amulet. This basically like a bodybuilding barbarian with a sword showed up and helped us, and his name's Conan, and he's in the Marvel Universe walking around now, and he got the amulet, and none of us really wanted to fuck with him for a necklace, so we opted not to, and we kind of just left him there. But don't worry, we left him in good company. He's under the watchful eye of the Punisher, and they're going on walkabout through the Savage Land. But what she doesn't know is when the Punisher and Conan got to the Antarctic coast, where where the Savage Land is, they split ways. They had these deep-seated conversations about philosophy and all the things that they do, and they decided to depart as brothers, and they high-fived, and it was a beautiful moment, and they went their separate ways. Well, Conan went from Antarctica, did a little loop-de-loop, jaunty-jaunt, did some hiking in South America, and with his amulet, and he's ended up in this small village. And look, Conan being who Conan is, he goes to the first place you would expect him to go, right? Like he waltzes into this bar, and he's like, there will be two things. There will be drinking and there will be fighting. And doesn't matter which one we do first, but those two things are going to happen. And the guys sitting in the bar, they're all tough dudes. They're like, this is a dive bar, kind of a South American biker bar, so to speak. And they're all just like, all right, we can do the fighting first. Like, you want to swagger in here with your big dick and like make these claims? We'll go ahead and do this. And
is that a quote from the?
No, that's paraphrased by Caleb, which is good paraphrasing, I think. But one panel over, all these dudes are just wrecked. Like they're just broken. They're just like over tables and kind of bleeding. And he like saunters up and settles up at the bar, and the guy's like, "Here's booze. It's not good booze, but if you drink enough of it, you'll do the trick. Thanks for not totally wrecking my bar." And then, so Conan's sitting there and he's just like, hey, this is terrible. This is terrible alcohol, but I'll drink it. And he feels something bite him in the back of the neck, right? Like something that's, and he's like, fucking mosquitoes, right? South America, they happen. Also in Arkansas. But it's not a mosquito. It's a dart. And he just kind of like just goes downhill and kind of blacks out for a second. When he wakes back up, he's still at the bar. Nothing's changed. There's still, like, the people aren't there, but everything's still kind of wrecked, and the bartender's still there. He's still just like, and he's very nervous, right? Like he's handing Conan a beer bottle and he's shaking and he's just like, here's more swill. And Conan like stops for a second. He takes a deep breath and he's like, the smell of battle's gone. The smell of the jungle's gone. The blood's gone. this isn't the same place. What the fuck? And like the bartender freaks out. He's like, hey dude, they made me do it. They took me. I'm kidnapped too. Don't hurt me. And he kind of just throws this bartender across the room and just goes charging out. And all of a sudden he's like ninja, like spec ops. They look like, I mean, honestly, they look like Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe. They start attacking him. And I mean, Conan, stupid, right? They should have took Conan's swords, but they didn't. Doesn't make sense. But Conan whips out his sword and like he's got a machete and he's kind of cleaving through these fuckers. And he gets to a wall and he breaks through the wall. And on the other side of this wall is a giant city. And this wall is kind of a white bubble that they were going to keep him in. And he breaks through it and it's a giant city. And there's more of these like assault dudes there and they all try. They try. They don't succeed. They are failures as assault dudes. And as he's just wrecking shop, all of a sudden he hears this booming voice. Stop. Quit. He looks over, and it's Dr. Goddamn Doom. Right? Like, they have transplanted Conan to Valeria? Latveria. Yeah. They've transplanted Conan to Latveria. And keep in mind, Conan's got the third eye of Agamotto in his possession. And now he's hanging out with Dr. Doom. This should scare the shit out of you this should entice you to read this book. It should excite you. But if you're living in this world, you don't want Doom to have this thing any more than you want anybody. Oh, I mean, maybe Matt does. Matt's all like, there's wreckage will happen. But now we get to hear Doomian conversations with Conan. And so I know when a lot of people heard that Conan was coming over into the Marvel Universe, they were nervous. They didn't like it. They were just like, nah, but this is what I want. You give me Conan walkabout with the Punisher. Give me Conan sitting down with Dr. Doom. Give me Elektra and Doctor Strange's astral projection, like figuring this shit out with tentacle monsters about to happen. With Conan thrown in the mix, yeah, I'll take it. You kidding? No, easy sell. Take my money.
So one thing stands out to me on this. Mm-hmm. And have you read the latest Valkyrie issue?
Yes. Yeah.
The mirror is made out of a gem of Agamotto as well. He doesn't say which one. So there is something going on with the Agamotto gems.
Marvel's building up to this.
Something is about to happen with Doctor Strange. And
so the story's great. I gotta tip I doff my cap to Patch Zurcher, man. I love that dude. Like I said, I've been following a fan of his work for a long time. He's amazing. I mean, for the DC work, he draws one of the best warlords I've ever seen. He was made for this. And I know we were all kind of disappointed with what we were given from him on the Savage Sword that he did with Jim Zub a while back. I still argue that was more a distaste with the story than necessarily the art, but it wasn't his best work. This, he just goes above and beyond. The character design, what he's able to do with the panels and with Doctor Strange, like his magics. At one point, even though Doctor Strange is just like, again, astral projecting himself, he turns one of the ninja's swords into a snake. And there's just all of these details. It's very dynamic storytelling. Patch Zurcher's a master of his craft. He is an artist that if he is on a book, I will pick it up, like flat out. I will give it that opportunity. I love the work he's done. If you follow him on Instagram, you see like he's a genuinely cool dude, just producing some amazing work. And I loves it. This was fun. This is the excitement that I get from superheroes, and I think it's a great work.
Well, in this book, I wouldn't even say superheroes are all kind of anti-heroes.
In a way. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of that Thunderbolt series that came out a few years ago, which, again, no one's really picked up on this. Elektra and the Punisher were banging it out in that Thunderbolt series, and nothing's happened with that since. And so if you have them in the same book, I would like writers to play with that more.
I think that book happened before Secret Wars, though. So
that's true.
It may not be a thing that exists anymore.
It needs to.
I mean, I'm fine with it existing.
I demand it. I want two things. I want Sabretooth and I want Monet to hook back up because that was happening and it was awesome. And I want Elektra and Frank Castle to be a couple and to be a successful couple and to have like couple-y conversations.
So the weird thing is, though, is that has not been talked about since then, but Johnny Blaze is still in hell.
Still in hell. Still the king of hell,
which happened in that book.
So. I mean, you can pick and choose, right? Continuity wise, and that's.
I mean, ultimately, it's two people that could give a fuck about the rest of the planet fucking.
Right.
I don't know that I would call it a relationship.
I want it to be.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying that I don't think either one of them would care if it was never discussed again.
Yeah.
Top of that, she's back in New York City in Hell's Kitchen helping Daredevil become Daredevil again.
Yep.
Oh, I haven't picked up on that book. Maybe I'll give that a chance at some point. I know Chichetto's back on it.
Yep.
I'll do it. I'll catch back up. But anyway, dude, great books all around. I'm verklempt. I have no words for the amazingness of those books.
Yeah, we had 3 really good books this week.
Yep, and we're going to get some more books this next week on Wednesday.
What?
New Comic Book Day.
So
I challenge you, listening to this show, go to your new comic book shop, or go to your comic book shop, pick up a new book, and then pick up an old book, and go home and have fun. That's really, I mean, if that's the hardest challenge you face of the week, you're doing okay. Right? So, what are some of the books that you guys? I want you to set the menu for next week. What are y'all grabbing?
I will go last because I picked 3.
Okay,
just in case. So,
well, there's a lot coming out next week. I'm looking forward to. But the one I'm looking forward to the most is extremely predictable to anybody that's perused what's coming out next week. So I'm stoked about Marvel Comics Punisher Soviet #1 from Garth Ennis and Jason Burrows. I can't fucking wait for this. Jason Burrows, I am stoked.
I love Jason Burrows.
Man, I love his art.
To see his Punisher work. So the story is a dozen Russian mobsters lie dead at the Punisher's feet, and he wasn't the one who pulled the trigger.
What?
Yeah, if you know Frank Castle, you know this doesn't necessarily set his mind at ease. I cannot fucking wait for this, man.
I hope it's everything you dream of.
It
dude.
will. It will be.
He knows it. He feels it in his soul.
I hope it is, because it's been a long time since we had that good of a... I mean, I haven't read Kill Crew yet, but...
well, Kill Crew's a different animal.
Yeah.
Different animal. It's it's a parody.
Yeah, but we haven't seen that Punisher in a long time.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
I think the last Punisher series that I really, really enjoyed was drawn by him, but it was written by Garth. It was the sequel to Punisher Born. All right, it was kind of presented as a sequel to Punisher Born. Yeah, Platoon.
That was Goran Parlov.
Oh, was it?
That
Okay.
illustrated that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
That was cool.
It was. So I'm excited about a book that, again, like I said earlier, kind of getting away from superhero books a little bit, exploring to see what else is out there, what other stories are being told. And there's a book coming out from Boom Studios that caught my eye this week. And it's called Folklords, #1. And it caught my eye, #1, because it's by Matt Kent. And I'm a big fan of Matt Kent. Also by Matt Smith is the other co-worker on this book. And
I love the 10th Doctor.
I don't think it's that one.
Actually, it's the 11th, and now I'm going to get a nasty email from
Wait, no,
Rod.
Is it? I mean, Matt Kent's got connections. This could be. Is it that Matt Smith?
I doubt it.
Could be. I don't know. I'm excited about this book. It looks good. So doesn't really give you much of a synopsis on the website that I use, but it's basically from Narnia to Harry Potter. We've seen our heroes leave the real world for a fantasy world, but Ansel, who is kind of the main character of this book, he lives in a world of monsters and magic, and he's haunted by visions of the world that looks a lot like ours. There's folks walking around in tailored suits and modern tech, and so he's a fantasy guy that comes over to the real world, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen with that. It's Matt Kent. Yeah. It's Matt Kent writing poignantly, I feel. And there's a little bit of fantasy elements, but it's not so much the fantasy elements where it's all Dungeons and Dragons. It's what happens when one of those characters comes over our world. It's what I thought we were going to get out of Berserker Unbound after the second issue, and arguably didn't.
No, we did not.
No. But I'm curious, so I'm going to check this out. I encourage you all to do the same.
Speaking of Berserker Unbound, my book is by Jeff Lemire.
Nice.
And it is called Family Tree.
Oh, yes.
I've heard of this.
Jeff Lemire and Phil Hester, who is a wonderful artist.
Yes, he is.
Image Comics. And I started to read the synopsis of this, and I stopped after the first half of the first sentence because it said, when an 8-year-old girl literally begins to transform into a tree. That's all I needed to know about this book. I didn't need to continue on. Yeah, she is. It's Jeff Lemire and Phil Hester, and he's writing about a girl turning into a tree.
I signed up for this one.
Did you?
Yeah.
I'm grabbing it.
So yeah. I actually picked 3 because I assumed one of you would have picked that. But we do kind of push Jeff Lemire a lot. So
we do, and like I said, when I saw Matt Kent's name, I was just like, I haven't thrown Matt Kent any love in a long time.
I had clicked on the one for that you chose. The what was the name of it?
Folklords.
Folklords. Yes. I had thought about that one, and then I'm like, well, let me see what else is there, and then I came up with because as Matt said, it's a thick week.
It is. I'm kind of terrified to see what this week's going to do to my wallet.
Are y'all going to be a regular week for me?
Are y'all going to pick up a Far Sector from DC Comics? Have y'all seen this?
I've heard of it. I don't know.
So you're probably going to want to. The author, she is a N.K. Jemisin. N.K. Jemisin. She is a very successful fantasy writer. Mm-hmm. It's a black woman. I sought her out years ago because I was looking for women.
I remember you telling me the story.
So I read her Broken Earth series. Fucking fantastic.
Okay.
And it's been optioned. Fucking fantastic.
Okay.
So this is one of the Green Lanterns, young female. I believe it's a black female Green Lanterns. It's a murder mystery. That's what caught my attention.
Okay.
This woman's a great writer, and she's writing a murder mystery. So
fantastic.
Yeah, I think I'm compelled to pick that one up. Yeah. There's a bunch coming out.
There is. This week's gonna be next week. She's gonna be thick with 3 C's.
Man.
So, well, guys, we ready to bring this thing home?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, first off, as we bring this home, I want to remind you all to come out and hang out with us at Comic-Con-Way. Coming up real soon. Like I said, at least on the 16th, which is the Saturday, I believe, we're going to be there, going to be hanging out.
It's next weekend.
I'm not ready. I think I'm taking and getting, I'm starting my jam pieces. Instead of spending a bunch of money on art that I don't have, I'm going to just spend a little bit and get my jam pieces started on. And so I'll post those up on all the websites that we do, such as our Facebook group that we have, which you can join, or our Instagram page, or our Twitter page, which are at SFG Podcast on both of those. And we encourage you to join those because we would love to hear from you. If you don't mind, you could do us a solid. I know I said this earlier, but I want to say it again. Please leave us a little rating and review on wherever you find us. Tell your friends, spread the love, spread the word that we are a podcast that you enjoy listening to. Or, you know what, do me a favor. If we are a podcast that you've listened to, and maybe you listen to this episode and you think we can do something different, do something better, you didn't like it, maybe we did something that offended you, shoot us an email at southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com and let us know, because we are always striving to be a better show. We're striving to be a more entertaining show. At the end of the day, we are just going to be a couple of guys who are really good friends who sit around a table once a week and we talk about the things that we love. And that's the heart of this show. So we're not ever going to get away from that. But if there's something that we could do different, we like to grow. We like to learn. And so we would appreciate that feedback too. So you can't go wrong with constructive criticism, right? Like
you cannot.
That's the way you grow as a person, really. And who are we and all if not just ever expounding and bursting from the cocoon that is humanity, so to speak. So we got anything else?
I don't know how I would follow that.
Yeah, that did not
bursting from the cocoon.
That is humanity.
It's an X-Men reference, I
guys.
think.
If we don't have it, that could be. If we don't have anything else, go forward, love some comics, and Epstein didn't kill himself.
Woo!